Man, look at him, struggling to get from point A to point B. Don't even think he hears what note he's aiming for. Well, better help him before he hurts himself. If your shifts sound anything like this guy, this video will change how you play forever. Today, I'll show you two principles that will gradually take your shifts from being slurpy and inconsistent to silent and reliable every time. These are the same keys I use with my students to help them get into top music schools across the country. You'll also learn the 4 different types of shifts and when to use them. These are principles many violinists, even advanced ones, don't fully understand. They are, however, essential to playing in tune and becoming a fully reliable shifter. So if you've ever missed a shift in performance, stick around and you can thank me later. When we shift on the instrument, we're kind of like magicians. We use misdirection to subtly draw attention away from our shifts and onto the beauty of the notes before and after the shifts. If done correctly, our shifts generally don't have to be all that fast to be unnoticed by our audience. The shifts can even become an expressive part of our musicality. The 2 keys of shifting that make this possible are release and timing. I think of releasing 4 things every time that I shift. The old finger, or the finger that we're shifting from, the thumb, the bow, and the last sneaky one is the left shoulder. The finger and thumb are pretty self-explanatory. If we don't let go of the pressure, it will be difficult to move easily and reliably. You should have experienced this when doing the ghost note exercise in the last video. The bow is critical because if it doesn't release, then the audience will hear all of the noise from the shift. While it's very important that we release the pressure from the bow, we shouldn't stop the bow. The bow can slow down, but it needs to stay flowing so that our ear can hear the ghost note guiding it. The release of the bow and the timing of when we return the pressure is the secret sauce to making shifts sound seamless. Finally, the left shoulder releasing is a quirky point that I like to emphasize. We should always be mindful of this left shoulder, as it is the place where tension usually originates for us. It's part of what makes the violin so difficult. We have this long lever of a violin here, and we have to actually apply downward pressure towards the end of that lever. This makes it very tempting to clamp with the head, and what is much more harmful, squeeze upwards with the shoulder. If we do end up clamping with the shoulder, it makes everything more difficult, but particularly shifting. Real quick, tense up your shoulders and pretend to shift into a high position. Notice how locked the shoulder and elbow become and how unnatural it feels to come around the invisible instrument. Now try it with relaxed shoulders. Notice how easy it feels and also the natural movement of the shoulder and elbow coming under and around as we get into higher positions. When we actually get our instrument, any tension in the shoulder will make it much more difficult to move smoothly into higher positions. And of course, tension always harms reliability. So, we release the finger, thumb, bow, and left shoulder. Make sure you release each part completely. If you only release 90% of the pressure, the shift will feel slightly different every time, and other variables like rosin residue or a sweaty finger will affect how the finger moves. 100% relaxed is the path to consistency. The second key for shifting is timing. What we're timing is the release of pressure from the 4 things discussed in the last step, and more importantly, when we return the pressure. The thing that guides the timing and the most important tool for shifting is our ear. The ear is in charge of the shift and tells us when we've arrived at the new position and should return the pressure. We want to time the release of pressure so that it sounds organic with no abrupt cutoff of the note before the shift. And we typically want to time the return of pressure so that it's clean and clear. The release of pressure is going to be pretty similar for most shifts, but timing the return of the pressure is what demands most of our attention. If we're doing a shift to the same finger, the moment our ear tells us that that finger has hit the new position, we will return the pressure in both the left and right hands. If we are shifting from one finger to a different finger, as soon as the ghost note hits the new position, we immediately switch to the new finger and return the pressure to the bow. We don't want to linger on the ghost note long enough for it to be audible to an audience. It should barely be audible to us. We also don't want to return the pressure too early, which would make the shift sound slurpy. So this would be an example of timing that's too early. It's characterized by hearing a slurp into the new note, and this would be an example of timing that is too late. It sounds clunky, not seamless, and draws attention to the ghost note. A final word on timing. Shifting inevitably takes some time. We need to make sure that we take the time from the previous note, or the note that we're shifting from. This will ensure that we arrive on time, which is the important thing. How much of the previous note we cut off changes depending on the speed of the passage. I like to always err on the side of shifts feeling slow, but if the passage is fast, we do have to plan for that. When playing a faster passage, we need to leave the previous note earlier in order to give ourselves space to shift and arrive on time. And so here's the rule of thumb. The faster the passage, the earlier we need to leave the previous note. We want to drill that in even when we're practicing slowly. So if I'm playing a passage like this and I know the shift is going to go fast, I want to practice leaving the first note 50% of the way through the note so that the same ratio holds when I speed it up. This is actually a critical point. I don't just want to leave the first note, say, 10 milliseconds early. It's the ratio that matters. When I speed things up, everything will speed up together. So it's all about keeping how early I leave the previous note proportionally accurate. As I speed up the passage, my shift speeds up as well. If I don't do this, my shift will get jerky and inconsistent as I approach performance tempo. So my two keys of shifting are release and timing. This is something my students can recite automatically because they think about it every time they're drilling a shift. At least, they should be. All right, let's talk about the 4 different types of shifts. Now for every shift, it's critical that we have a plan for getting from point A to point B. The shift that we practiced in the last video was an old finger shift. And that is what we like to default to when possible. However, some situations make the old finger shift impractical. For those times, understanding the different types of shifts will help you have a successful plan for every situation. The shifts are mostly classified based on whether we shift on the new or old finger and whether we use the new or old bow. Shift number 1, and the one we like to default to, is called the old finger shift. It uses the old finger to shift and the old bow. We like to use this one whenever possible because it is the most straightforward and reliable shift we have. When done correctly, it makes the shift sound very clean while still giving the player an easy way to use the ear to guide the shift. It's very good at giving you a framework to orient yourself on the instrument and is probably the most effective shift at training you to be an in-tune player. When you're shifting using the old finger, you should have a clear understanding of your intervals. This means you should know the spacing between the notes. You should know the space between the first note and your ghost note, and also the space between your ghost note and the new note. We think of this spacing in terms of whole steps and half steps. So for this shift, the spacing between the first note and the ghost note is 2 whole steps. 1 half step, 1 whole step, 1.5 steps, 2 whole steps. So the spacing between these 2 notes is 2 whole steps. We also need to understand the spacing between the ghost note and the arrival finger. 1 half step, whole step, 1.5 steps. So for this shift, the shift is 2 whole steps, and then the reach between the 1 and the 3 is 1.5 steps. This will take you some time to visualize at first, but it will become automatic as you're consistent with it. While it takes more time initially, you'll be able to get shifts consistent with way fewer repetitions if you understand your spacing and intervals clearly. Don't skip this part. Yeah, I see you over there slurping up and down the fingerboard, fishing for notes without any idea where they're at. Don't be that guy. All right, so we have our bread and butter shift, the old finger shift. When do we use it? Basically whenever possible, and we're after a clean sounding shift. Pros of this shift are it's the cleanest and most reliable. It also trains you as a violinist and gives you very clear fingerboard geography. Cons, it's not the most expressive shift and we can't use it in every situation. The most common scenario where we don't want to use it is when the ghost note would take us to a higher pitch than the arrival note. For instance, in an ascending scale. Our ear is drawn to higher pitches, so since we're going beyond the arrival note, the ghost note will likely bug our audience. On shifts like these, we use the second kind of shift, a replacement shift. A replacement shift is when we use the old bow and the new finger. As I start the shift, I transition to using the new finger while continuing the same bow direction that I used in the previous note. When I arrive, I return the pressure to both the bow and the finger and change bow directions. This shift is also useful in a lot of other special situations. For instance, when we're changing strings and we have a shift involved. Pros of this kind of shift: it solves the issue of ghost notes going beyond the arrival note. You can also listen for the interval note, rather than including an additional ghost note, so there's less planning involved. Cons? Not much, except it's not quite as tidy as the old finger shift. The next shift is an exciting one and is arguably the most expressive: the new finger shift. This one is typically used when we want to add some slide or schmaltz to our sound. It's also very useful when we have very large shifts and using a ghost note feels less practical. While modern players typically don't use and abuse this shift as much as they once did, I'm still in love with that old-timey sound with lots of schmaltz in the shifts. This shift uses the new bow and the new finger. Key to making this shift work is to fully release before changing the bow. We don't want to hear the entrance of the new finger. The slide should just emerge out of nowhere. Also, timing when to return the pressure is a little more of a decision here. The earlier you return the pressure, the more pronounced the schmaltz. No matter how much schmaltz you want though, don't overpress with the left hand before you arrive and throw off your shift. The obvious pro of this shift is that it's expressive. A really nice thing about new finger shifts is that once you get good at them, you don't have to practice each individual shift all that much. Because you are sliding so audibly, as long as you're relaxed and your ear is in charge, you should never miss. The con may also be a pro, but it's not the cleanest shift, obviously. Finally, we have what I call a blind shift. It's honestly usually a last resort when using a ghost note isn't possible. This most often happens when we're shifting after an open string. But it can also happen with large jumps and string crossings, or if we have a big retake, making listening for a ghost note impossible. For these shifts, instead of using our ear to guide us, we use reference points on the instrument. For example, things such as our thumb, how far our arm is extended, how far underneath the instrument our elbow is, what the relationship is between our hand and the shoulder of the instrument, how much our wrist is bent and the angle of the fingers. Honestly, there are so many variables to rely on that the best way of getting these shifts in tune is just through a lot of repetition. As you're doing your reps, pay attention to your reference points and strive to make sure you're hitting the note in the same way every time. It can even be helpful sometimes to just try to find the exact position of the new note without even coming from the reference point. With enough repetitions, you will know exactly where that pitch is. I'm trying to make sure that my thumb is coming to the exact same spot, that the height of my hand and the rotation of the elbow are exactly the same every time. So, pros of blind shifts. They're actually very clean when you get good at them. For instance, Yo-Yo Ma was once asked in an interview how his intonation was so reliable. And he said it was simple. He just knows where every single note is on his instrument. That's kind of what needs to happen to have reliable blind shifts. Cons? It's just way harder, less consistent, and it requires way more repetitions to get blind shifts to be reliable. So, hopefully you now understand the 4 types of shifts. To drive home what these are, I'm going to demonstrate them for you, and I want you to see if you can guess which shift type I'm using in the comments. This little quiz is exactly how I solidify these ideas in my lessons, so don't skip it. I'll include the answers in the description. You can use a cheat sheet PDF that I've left down in the description to help you to be able to identify which shift is which. It'll also help for future reference. Now that you understand my 2 keys of shifting, release, and timing, and you know the 4 types of shifts, you're armed with the knowledge to become an expert shifter. However, without a clear system to train and develop these different types of shifts, that knowledge will never turn into skill. To learn my exercises for training shifting and other advanced tips, check out this next video.